everybody. So we're going to be, talking cannabis data today. So I guess we've got Cecilia here today. So I guess I'll introduce myself, and then I guess we could go around and just do a quick introduction to each other. So my name's Keegan, and I've been in the cannabis space for a little while. My background is in economics, and so it's fun to apply economics, data science to problems in the cannabis industry. And so I've coincidentally started a company, Cannalytics, that does exactly that. And so we help people in the cannabis industry make sense of their data, wrangle data, and get value from their data. But enough of me. I'll let Charles and Paul, and then you as well, Cecilia, introduce yourselves to each other.
I'm Charles, and I have 27 years of software development experience, and I've been working in data science for the last year and a half, and I guess Cecilia's gone, so we can skip that.
No, do go on, Charles.
But still, we have more to learn about.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know you had 27 years experience. That's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been a long time of programming.
And if you can share, how goes your forays into machine learning?
It's going pretty good. I've been making some progress in the Kaggle competition. I'm at 97%, and the leaders are at 98 and 99%. So I just got to eke that little extra percentage out there.
Oh, good for you. That's good.
Thanks. And I found out, actually, somebody told me about this a couple months ago, and I tried it last night. There's this library called Pandas Profiling, and you can give it a data frame, and it will tell you about each one of the variables or each one of the columns, like how many missing values there are, what percentage of, what the most common values are in it. It'll give you a correlation matrix.
Wow.
It just does all these things, and it'll export it to an interactive HTML file. So you can have you can bring it up in a browser and just and click on different buttons and tabs and stuff and look at it. It's amazing.
Sounds pretty powerful.
It is.
Welcome, Sean. We're just sort of introducing each other at the moment, or introducing ourselves. So my name's Keegan. This is Charles, Paul. We meet up regularly to talk about cannabis data. So we're happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me, guys? All right.
Barely.
Let me fix that. How about that?
Much better.
Perfect. Well, nice to meet y'all. Yeah, I guess I'll introduce myself. So my name is Sean. I've worked in the cannabis industry here in Denver and Northern Colorado for about 7 years. And I just recently finished a data science program to kind of upskill myself. And so I'm just looking for any opportunity to apply, my cannabis experience with this newfound skill of data science that I have.
Well, you found the right group.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is everyone in Colorado?
We're scattered actually in various states. So I founded a company, Cannalytics, that's based out of Olympia, Washington.
Oh, cool.
Charles is in Oregon, and Paul is in Michigan. So we sort of represent cannabis markets, all across the country.
Very
We'll be in Colorado Springs over the July 4th week to visit some friends out there, so I won't be too far away from you, Sean.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a good time to visit.
Yeah.
Can you, I guess, do you have like any topics of interest that are like, so what like are people talking about in Colorado? If I can ask.
I think, yeah, Colorado last year passed legislation for cannabis clubs, basically a bar you can go to and smoke up, and that's been the buzz lately. So I don't know how that plays into analytics. I actually have some data from a dispensary I worked at that I wanted to see if I could get some advice from you guys on how to crunch these numbers, or if you know any algorithms to do some. My idea was to do like a sort of practice with some time series prediction, and it's about 5 months worth of sales data, and see if I could use that 5 months. I know it's not perfect because it's not a full year's worth of sales data, but at least try and play with some algorithms to get some time series predictions.
Yeah. Keegan, do you mind if I step in for a second?
Yes, by all means, Paul.
Yeah, so Sean, I'm just actually wrapping up a master's program in data science from University of Wisconsin, and I'm working on my capstone project right now. Thanks to Charles and Keegan, I was able to get hold of some Washington State sales data. What I'm doing right now is going to be using some market basket analysis on some sales information to see if I could make some like sales recommendations from dispensaries to customers. What I really wanted to do was do a project on sequential pattern mining, which kind of is the same thing as market basket analysis, where it makes recommendations, but it makes recommendations over time. I just found out last night, unfortunately, I was going through the data and the sequential patterns I was looking to uncover was between the suppliers or the producers, the product producers, and the dispensaries. So the product producers could say, okay, you bought these products from us. Maybe you could buy, product X and Y as well. What I found out, though, is those transactions that are recorded in the Washington State data are what the producers are doing is they're recording their transactions in a big batch. So instead of every time there's a transaction, they record it, they just pile up all the transactions and enter them like in one day. So I can't actually use that data. So the data is pretty bad in that respect. But I did notice that the transactions between, the sales transactions are definitely spread out over time. And I could use like a market basket analysis approach. So it sounds like you're trying to do something like with retail sales as well, but you want to do more of like what sales trending or something like that?
Yeah, just kind of a way to see if I can use the data I have to kind of predict the next week's sales or the next month's sales.
So some time series, like halt winters or some seasonal type forecasting.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, it's only like 5 months worth of data, so I can't get that full year spectrum in there. But it does include 420, so that kind of adds an interesting outlier in there.
Okay, so I don't know what that means. What does 420 mean?
420, the weed holiday that everyone goes and buys up the most weed.
Okay, I didn't even know about that. Yeah, you tell I'm green to the space, no pun intended.
That's when everyone has their big sale.
Okay.
Like President's Day or
like the Black Friday
sale.
of the weed industry.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Cool.
Yeah, I can pull that up if you guys give me a moment, and then maybe you can give me your 2 cents on the data. Unfortunately, it doesn't specify product. It just has the dollar amounts and then the time, and then I've redacted it because it had all the employee names. So I
Yeah.
just changed the employee names to employee 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera.
So is this from their point of sale system at the, okay.
Yeah. It's using metric. That's the standard here in Colorado for POS systems. But yeah, just give me a moment. I'll pull that up for us to check out.
Just thoughts right off the bat. You know, if you've got daily data, you could start uncovering some of my favorite things to look at are like day of the week effects. So what day are you having the most sales?
And I have done some analysis like that and like pinpointed which hours of the day are the hottest and which days of the month are hottest. So I have been able to do some analysis there. But at the end of the day, it just seems more like an HR tool to motivate employees to sell more or something. It's not really, that's kind of the gist I get from it. It's not really like predictive. It's more like, you know, management tool or planning tool.
For essentially optimal staffing. So
yeah, exactly.
The way I would go about it is you'd partition your man hours. So your hours. So it's essentially if you have 12 employees, then they're each working, 30, 40 hours a week. You would just have your total hours, and then you'd almost want to match that with, if you're doing hourly, then you'd almost want to weight your staffing in accordance to, your predicted sales spikes, if, to the best you can. But if you can share, what were the busiest times of the day?
Yeah, let me pull that up as well. Trying to remember where I put that analysis.
So this is sort of what Paul and I talk about is there's so many opportunities here, and I'm sure people have done them, like, so you're doing them yourselves, but there's not that much, out there in the public. So there's not that much public research about, or at least that I've found. I'm, point me in the direction if I'm wrong, but, of research about, say, the busiest times of the day. No. So I don't know. There's just lots of opportunities for you to get your research out there and people to get some eyeballs on it.
What would you say is like a good platform for getting that out there?
Well, I may be biased, but at the moment, Cannalytics is essentially trying to provide data to people in the cannabis industry. So it's still a seedling company. I'm always just a big fan of self-publishing. So if you have your own website, put it on your own website.
GitHub.
Yeah, I've done Medium and GitHub. And that's about it so far, but I'm always, or in LinkedIn. So I'm just always looking for a new platform, really.
But yeah, so that's essentially what Cannalytics is. So if you have something in particular you want to get out there, we can, send me a message and we can try to get your data and your analysis out there.
Great. Yeah, and just to be fully transparent, my main motivation is to find a job in data science.
Same here.
Specifically in the cannabis industry, or just any?
In general, but I think my domain knowledge would be best applied in the cannabis industry. But I know data science applies to anything, really. Yeah.
So for Charles and Sean, if you guys are both looking for work, I work for General Motors here in Southeast Michigan, and we we have this big push going on right now as far as data science and analytics, because it's really driving all parts of the company. So I can probably send you guys a link to our job posting board.
Great.
I can't guarantee anything. The good thing is now that we're doing a lot of our positions, especially positions like data science, remotely. So take a look at the job postings. I can't guarantee anything, but I can always reach out to the hiring manager that you'd be applying to and put in a word for you. But yeah, I'll send that link to both of you if you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Great.
And I got those charts. You guys still want to take a look at them?
You're welcome to share your screen if you're able.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just not familiar with this one. The screen share is present now. Share your screen. Does it require permission or something?
It may. Does it seem like I need to require permissions?
Yeah, on the share button, it's all blacked out. So it seems. Oh no, sorry, that's my fault. I need. Okay. Is that working now?
Yeah, we can see you, Sean.
Okay. So how do I drive this? So, is it moving?
Yes.
Okay. So this came from. I'll show you the data real quick. So this is kind of the raw format of the data. So we have our price, the tax, and then total price and total paid are the same numbers. So I eliminated one of those columns. Register, this column was kind of unnecessary data, so I eliminated that as well. And this is where I redacted the employee names from their actual name to E5 or E1, et cetera, et cetera. And this was the time of date. This was taken back in 2019 as of the first of the year all the way to June 2nd. So roughly 5 months. And then this was the total gross revenue for the dispensary within that 5-month time frame.
Quick idea. I don't know how much of interest it is to you, but you could potentially go to the dispensary or a similar dispensary with this idea is you could basically try to
I think
I was just thinking, sorry, I was just thinking for a second.
Oh,
we'll have to maybe pinpoint the specific regression, but you could essentially run a regression and try to pinpoint essentially if any of the the salespeople have above average sales.
and I did something like that. So I'll go into some of that right now. So this was my first initial analysis. This is in a Google Colab notebook running on Python. So the original data set, I'm changing some of the column names here. And then this is the pie chart indicating which employees had the most sales. Now, keep in mind that not all employees are strictly doing sales work like this E10 and E9. They were mostly front desk, checking IDs and such. But as you can see, E7, E1, E2 had the lion's share of the sales. And then in another little analysis. So this is where I took this is where I was able to pinpoint which hour of the day and which day of the month had highest sales. So based on, and forgive me, it's been a while since I looked at this. But this would have I believe this is where I pinpointed. So the Y column is, oh, these numbers don't make sense now. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at these. But what I was trying to do is like where it's blackest, it's the highest average sale relative to all the other days.
Here's the way that you could potentially simplify this to make it more meaningful. So, or more meaningful, or meaningful in a different way. So I was thinking you could almost like lump the times of day. So the simplest would just be a dichotomous morning or afternoon. And that way you could compare the two. So you could see, okay, what's the average sales, before 12 p.m. And what's the average sales after 12 p.m. I'm not sure. I mean, they may be the exact same, but it would be interesting to see if, I don't know, maybe average receipt goes up or down, and if so, by how much. But
yeah, I had something like that where I compared each employee to the average ticket price, or average sale price, or average total receipt. Just kind of comparing that way. So I can peruse around and see if I can find it. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of what I had.
Just curious, Sean, do you know are you friends with the owner of the dispensary?
So no, well, yes, but they sold. So I caught wind of that and I tried to get some financing together to kind of buy them out. And I actually got $3 million lined up to make an offer, made an offer, and they laughed in my face. Like,
So,
wow, $3 million! Oh my gosh, I'm really lowballing you, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, they rejected my offer, and I'm pretty sure what they got was closer to 10 million.
wow. So maybe you guys have a better perspective on this than I do, but I'm sure you do actually. But when it comes to dispensaries, they're all cash businesses, right?
Yeah. They're
right?
Progressively, debit cards and credit cards are working their way in there, but it's through loopholes. It's not really
Right. So
anything official.
Dealing with that much cash on hand must be a real pain for the businesses to deal with, huh?
Yeah, it had its own challenges. We had 2 gun safes on site, and that's where our petty cash and our product was stored. Even then, it got robbed twice while I was working there.
Wow.
I worked there for over a year. But both those robberies were kind of like almost joke instances. Like one, they went into the grow room and then just literally dragged the plants out by their stems with a trail of dirt, like following them down the block. And another one, they did a smash and grab after hours, broke through the front door, went into the bud tending room, and then just took all the concentrates and then tried to resell them. And then they were caught reselling them because they had all the initial RFID tags and all that stuff. So
okay,
just a bunch of jokesters, really. Yeah. But still, I mean, that that kind of goes to show you kind of that it's still a threat of safety.
And I was thinking that would increase costs across the board, whether you get robbed or not, because now everybody has to spend a small fortune on security cameras, security doors. I think they use like the armored cars for the transportation. So there's all sorts of extra expenses involved.
Well, for more context, this owner, she was really not privy to spending money on the business. She just wanted to collect as much, I guess, margin from the revenue as possible. So anytime where she could skip out, I mean, we had security cameras all over the place, but when it came to like reinforcing doors or anything like that, she didn't care. She just ate that minor cost compared to what it would cost to reinforce the doors.
So is she just selling out and leaving the industry, or you think she's going to reinvent? Yeah. Okay.
That's my impression. She got started when, it was just the people who were growing in their basement that had the like willingness to jump into this industry. And that crowd is kind of getting phased out now, and then the market's consolidating in Colorado to more chain type operations. But she was kind of like the mom and pop type of business owner and didn't really have ambitions to kind of grow it, just kind of walk away and cash out and walk away. And she cashed out pretty well. I'll give her that.
Yeah. So that you're talking about consolidation. I think we've talked about that on this call a couple of times, but that seems like that's inevitable, right? I mean, every industry goes through that phase.
Yeah.
And the intersection of data and consolidation, I wonder what kind of opportunities, I'm just kind of throwing this out as a brainstorming idea, but market consolidation and data, right? So what could be some opportunities there? I mean, obviously every business, if you're going to get bought up by somebody else, you got to have your numbers, right? You got to have your typical finances in line, your POS and everything else. But I'm just, can you guys think of anything that might be useful to large kind of, not corporate, but maybe corporate, entities that are going to consolidate and pull the industry together?
Well, one data source that I wanted to play with was, at least in Colorado, all license owners are listed publicly. So to take that list of license owners and see whether it has shrunk or whether there's more licenses but fewer owners, just kind of get some preliminary analysis from that, just to see, kind of measure that consolidation that you're mentioning.
Yeah, so kind of have an idea of what's on the horizon or where it's trending. Yeah.
I'm sure it's just the same in the other states. All license owners are listed on a state list somewhere.
Yeah, it's hard to, in Michigan, it's not like Washington, right, where Keegan was able to supply some of the state data for Washington, but it's you're saying that Washington State has like a very liberal Freedom of Information Act, and that's how the data came about?
Yes. However, Colorado does do a good job about publishing data. And in fact,
we do.
When I have done a little analysis of Colorado data, it can be a little tricky, but so one thing you can do with their data, so they publish, I think, the licensee lists monthly. So you can actually, track exits and entries. So you can say, oh, this person's entered, and then at a certain point, they've exited the market. So it's an interesting thing to track, because say your licensees, say they increased by 50 in the month. Well, there may have been 80 entrants and 30 exits. And so in the Colorado data, you can actually track, who's entering and who's leaving,
Oh, wow.
when they do it. It's not the easiest analysis in the world, but it is possible.
Yeah, and that would offer a lot of good insight to see what the average time or lifespan is for a license holder. At least the license holders that are seeing turnover versus the ones that are sticking around.
Exactly. So I'll have to so maybe next week I can share this analysis with you. So I'll share what I've done with Colorado. So I was just doing entries and exits for each month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be a little more detailed, but I think, like you said, you could do essentially, I think in economics, they would call that survival analysis. So, how long are these companies surviving on average?
Yeah.
And I think initially that would have been because in Colorado it was kind of an opportunity for a slow growth type of business model. So I bet initially that was kind of a longer sort of time frame, whereas now if you don't have 2 million at least in capital to start something up, then you're kind of SOL.
What about Keegan, with all your background in the lab testing environment? Just curious, to start up a lab, that must be a huge investment, right?
Yes. So you're probably, from what I've heard, it seems you're not going to really start up a lab for less than about $1 million of an investment. And the more I learn about labs, it seems that may even be low. So maybe 1 to 2 million just to get all your standard instruments and get them calibrated, get your team of scientists to do testing. However, that may be peanuts compared to what some of these cultivators are spending on their companies. So that's one thing, like you'll see at CannaCon. So like at CannaCon, there were like some people who are setting up some high dollar processing facilities, as well as cultivations. So I think if the people who are seriously going after large scale production, I think they have much higher costs, but it's definitely not trivial to set up a lab. And I would actually think, just because of some of the the hurdles you have to jump, getting your scientific team. So you've got to get people with masters, preferably PhDs in chemistry or microbiology. So those are tough requirements to meet, even if they're not nominally costly.
Yeah, that was a big thing in Oregon. We had legalization, and then they had all these really stringent testing requirements, but there were no labs. And then people thought, "Oh, I'll make a bunch of money," so they bought a bunch of lab equipment. But yeah, then they couldn't find people to run the lab equipment. And there was this huge backlog, and they had to sort of relax the requirements until the labs caught up to to be able to do the actual testing that they wanted.
I mean, that's interesting because as we talk through these different kind of pain points, there's an opportunity right there. So my brother-in-law, he does medical hiring, right, for nurses. And so it's a whole industry on this type of thing. Well, there's an industry, what you just stated there, Charles, there's a whole industry potentially there, right? How do you find the right people to man these labs? That's just amazing that all through this chain, this kind of value chain, there's all kinds of different things you could approach and try something with.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, it seems like every lab is looking for a good laboratory director or and or a quality assurance manager, because it's almost one of the things where if you have a good enough quality assurance manager on the market, you may as well get two, if you can find them, because they're that valuable and hard to find. Same for scientific director / laboratory director. Like if there's two that you can get, like you'd almost want two. But like you were all hitting on, it's tough to find them and connect the dots, because apparently if you've got a PhD in chemistry, or there's a high demand for your skills.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with the cannabis industry is it's tough to find people that are, I guess, on board to work in the cannabis industry. So you find some people that are enthusiastic to work there. However, just to be frank, they're still a little shunned in the scientific community. So just, from word of mouth, I have heard that, it can be tricky to maybe move into other industries and other lines of work if your background is at a lab that tests cannabis.
I imagine as time changes, probably in the near future, right, especially as more and more money comes into this industry, I think that's going to probably be less and less of an issue.
Yeah, to speak to that, I have two resumes, one with my cannabis experience and one without.
Well, if you're looking for something at GM, send the one without, because there's a bunch of old timers in this company. I swear, these engineers, I get emails all the time that say, somebody's heading out the door of retirement, with 42 years of service, and I'm just blown away. I've been with the company 6 years, but these people have been here since forever. These old engineers, it's amazing. So yeah, if you see anything you like and you're interested in, send the cleaned up one.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And then, so I kind of got a feel for what I was trying to show you guys a little bit better. So I'll just clear that up real quick, if you don't mind.
Yes, by all means.
So this is the x-axis is a minute of the hour. And so the Y is day of the month. So on, let's say, the 27th minute in the 27th day, which sounds weird, but the average ticket price was $86. So that'd be, I guess, a way to pinpoint, target those times. So I'm guessing, never mind. That's the average of every minute within each hour.
Oh, okay.
So why don't you could bin it like by the hour instead
of... I think I was trying to do that in my function here. So the column is based on minute, and the aggregating function was the average price. Dang it, I thought it was a little cleaner than that.
So I know sort of taking big averages does lose your granular data, but I just like to start with just a simple snapshot. So I love the hourly minutes. I think just looking at the day of the weeks would be useful, and then getting more granular as you go, because I think people have expectations that, oh yes, probably Friday, Saturday are busy days, but to what extent? And like, are Sundays busy?
Right. And one data point that I wish we took was location of driver's license we looked at, because from looking at all the IDs at every customer that walked in, I could, I was working in a dispensary in northern Colorado, so we were pretty close to Wyoming. And, just ballparking from the IDs that I saw, I would say, 20% of our customers drove down from Wyoming, which cannabis is still illegal there, but they didn't care. And the cops weren't really pulling people over driving back from Colorado into Wyoming. And so I think one interesting data point would be, where are people coming from? Because we would get people that would say, oh, I come from North Dakota once a month just to stock up on my stuff. Or Texans. I always love selling to Texans because they always had the highest receipts. They would spend easily over $300 for each tourist from Texan.
This is where you've hit on these good uses of these, or just these ways that these data points can be used in unexpected ways. So like you said, I think Colorado, correct me if I'm wrong, but they may even break down revenue by resident or non-resident.
I guess this is probably a factor of the dispensary I worked at because they wanted to do the bare minimum to get by. But other dispensaries track your ID, and then that's in a database somewhere that they keep, I'm sure. But the dispensary I worked at was more of the, all right, we're not in jail. Okay, let's keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense. I get the sense after going through the Washington State data that the quality is really low, and it's probably going to be that while it's going to be like that for a while, I would think, until there's kind of more stringent enforcement of for the dispensaries. But I think Keegan, you mentioned this before. They're trying just to get these businesses. They're trying to get their tax money, right? As long as they get their tax money,
the states are.
The states are, of course, right? So, and the more of these companies are operating, the more tax revenue they're going to get. So I'm sure they don't want to push too hard to push some of these folks not out of business, but to give them a hard time. So,
so Oregon used to track people's driver's license. And then Jeff Sessions became Attorney General, and they realized that he could come in at any time and take all that information. So then the governor, signed an order to purge all that information, and I think they can't keep that information for more than a day or two, or maybe they don't even keep it anymore.
Wow.
But so they were tracking it, and then they stopped tracking it. So yeah, it's.
Well, you've hit on something. I don't know if it necessarily applies here, but there's a principle I heard is almost be careful what you measure, because that dictates a lot of your analysis. Because, but in this case, it depends on who wants to be careful. But so, like in Colorado, for example. Yeah, exactly. So if you measured, the amount of sales going to people in Wyoming, it may lead you to suspect that something's crossing the border.
Well, we had this conversation a couple months ago. There was an article in the Oregonian about those towns along the Idaho border, and they had disproportionately high cannabis sales because all these people were coming over from Idaho and buying cannabis, and the parking lots of all the dispensaries were full of people with Idaho license plates. And there was this thing, New Mexico. One of the legislatures in New Mexico said, we want to legalize it before Texas does, so we can get all that revenue from Texas. So there's a great analysis there. You could, like a heat map along the county, along the borders.
Yeah.
Where it's legal, where it's not legal.
Well, I tried to make that pitch to a town closer to the border of Wyoming, and I pitched it to them. I said, hey, about 20% of our customers are coming from Wyoming. You could capture that whole market because they were in between the town I was working at and the Wyoming border. So they would have saved all these people driving from Wyoming about 30 minutes. which is a huge convenience for them. And inevitably, the town shot it down because they were skeptical about weed in the first place, and they didn't want it on their streets, which it already was there because they were driving down to my town, and then I don't know, smoking it there. But you know, it is what it is. You can't fight culture sometimes.
I think you mentioned this earlier, if you didn't, then I can mention it now. So at CannaCon, a regulator from Oklahoma spoke, and she was generally said that, you know, they're not really there just to, you know, bust people for breaking the violations, right? They want to help businesses, you know, operate by the rules.
Yeah.
And so I think that just sort of, you know, gets at the idea where there's if they just blanket ban it, then there's sort of shady things that happen. And so, you know, maybe stuff was coming in before Oklahoma legalized it from Colorado to Oklahoma. And so they're like, okay, you know, let's just, you know, set some regulations and then, you know, let people operate by these rules and then help them operate by the rules. And so that's just the trend I've sort of observed. But, you know, it may kind of help people, like, you know, not have to, like, take things across the borders, because that was another thing that was brought up, is that's actually, you know, that's a pretty, it is a federal offense, so it's definitely not something to take lightly.
Right.
But
my one rebuttal to that is people were throwing up resistance to, like, oh, well, these people are going over state lines, and that's a federal offense, like you mentioned. But my rebuttal to that is, like, every year, right before the 4th of July, people go to Wyoming from Colorado to buy fireworks. Fireworks are illegal in Colorado, but they go up to Wyoming anyway and take them down to Colorado and shoot them off. And, you know, we have fireworks injuries left and right from kids just playing with them in their backyard. So that was my one rebuttal. But yeah, no, it is a good point, because I think it's a federal crime to bring drugs over state line versus fireworks over state line. Well,
it was just something that was brought up once again at CannaCon. Somebody spoke about, just the legality of so he basically said, okay, you know, if you're operating in the cannabis industry, you've sort of got you got a mark, you know, you kind of are, you know, got a mark on your back. You know, you have to, you know, operate, you know, professionally and, you know, within the scope of the law. And you know, the last thing you want to do is, you know, take a bunch of cannabis from one state where it's legal to another state, you know, where it's not, because, you know, that's like a whole can of worms. So, but anywho, I don't know. It just makes me think that, like, you know, I think Oklahoma does touch Colorado, so
the panhandle.
So part of me thinks that they were just tired of just busting people all day long, and so they decided, okay, we just need to get some regulations in place.
Yeah.
I don't know why they actually did it.
There's a town in the Panhandle called Texahoma, I think, and they that's right where Colorado touches Oklahoma, and I think they just like position some extra police force there just for that reason. But yeah, because I have a friend that started a business down in Oklahoma right when it opened up, because he was doing everything janky up in Colorado and decided to go legit when Oklahoma legalized.
We kind of touched on this last week, is when they do that, you know, it brings this whole, you know, company, all this revenue out from the black market into, like, the open, into the, you know, so they're a legitimate business now. So now they're, you know, they're employing attorneys, they're getting a bank, they're hiring marketers,
W-2 employees, so on and so forth.
Exactly. So I just think it's bringing things into the sunlight so that way people can actually operate legitimately by the rules.
It's more transparent. It in the long run, it creates a safer product.
And it provides what we care about is, better data. So that's maybe we have our own incentives. But anywho. Well, it's been a good conversation today. So I have prepared just like, I guess, just with 2 minutes, Sean, maybe I can show you, and Paul and Chris as well, or Charles. I just did a quick forecast of Oklahoma sales. So this could be just. So this could show you how you could go about forecasting with your data, because you're going to have a lot more data points than I do. So basically, just real quick, and I'll publish this to GitHub, but you can actually get, so Oklahoma is publishing just their monthly tax revenue. And so you can download that. And
pretty good monthly numbers.
Yes. So they're getting about $5 million a month in tax revenue.
Good for them.
And so you can actually back out the total sales, right? So if the tax is 7%, then we can back out the total revenue. So here, I'll just go ahead and just run this whole thing. So essentially, we'll just back out the revenue from the tax, from the amount of tax, and then essentially forecast that forward. And I'll share this script with you. So we're essentially just using ARIMA models for forecasting. And I've got some links at the top for you to sort of read up on ARIMA forecasting. But it's basically just using historic values to forecast forward. So just to show you, so far, they started publishing data in July of 2020 and going through May of 2021. So cannabis revenues on average about 78, so about 80 million in sales per month.
Wow.
And just to show you the forecasting model, we only have 11 observations, and we're basically just forecasting with an AR1. So that's just using the past month's observations, essentially to forecast forward. So our forecasts aren't the best. And so if you plot this out, I don't know how realistic those forecasts are. But, it at least gives us, a dollar amount. So just to wrap this up real quick, essentially I'm forecasting, Oklahoma to have, 1 billion in cannabis sales in 2021.
Wow.
And that would be I think like a conservative estimate. So I would say more than that, but there could be errors, maybe sales dip way back down in the fall. So we'll see, but that's sort of a principle I like to share of forecasting is it's an iterative process. So basically, we're going to save these forecasts, and in the coming months, we can see what the actuals were, and at the end of the year, how far we were off.
Yeah.
So,
1 billion sounds reasonable. I don't know, for the first year of sales. Colorado saw 1 billion, I think, on the 4th year. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think that's what I remember.
oh, and that's why it's so interesting to look at these numbers. Is I think you're right. I think it took Colorado quite a while to get to 1 billion in sales.
So we were the first. So there was still a lot of resistance and hesitancy initially, whereas Oklahoma is coming in at it with all these other states kind of paving the path already.
Yeah, I wonder if the kind of the late bloomers will actually move super fast because they'll have probably better access to, well, the investors will see less
Financing.
risk.
Yeah, because all the banks still don't want to touch it.
Right.
And they have the technology. So we've got to, in the production function in economics, you've got technology. And so what's happened is, so like at Canacon is all the existing technology that's been produced in Colorado and Oregon and California and Michigan or where have you, it's all, actually there was some people who were doing some amazing stuff with hydrocarbons in Illinois, and so they were there. And so you have people bringing their technologies to Oklahoma, and then they're able to just start up quickly. But it just starting up at a staggering rate. It looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something I noticed as well, is people were kind of cutting their teeth on the Colorado market. And then after so many years, their friend back in their home state was saying, hey, let's start a business. This state just legalized. Just take everything and bring it over here. And that's kind of what my friends did in Oklahoma. They got really good at extraction, and then took all their experience and then used that to kind of create their business out of it.
Exactly. So just for example, there were like some like trimming machines that were built in Colorado, or maybe not Colorado, I'm not sure where they were built, but in one of those states. And then the processing, and this is where a lot of players are missing out, because I'm sure there are like manufacturers out there who do build processing equipment and stuff like that, but they just didn't want to touch the cannabis space. And then that just left an opening for a startup to come in and basically say, okay, we're doing, cannabis processing equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've got, this little successful business there. So it's just an interesting.
Yeah, I think it's been, I'm a little biased, but I personally think it's been a fascinating, interesting industry to watch grow and kind of take its form, just because it does have such unique circumstances in which it has grown and formed, in the dual state legalized, federally illegal, kind of everything is kind of created a push and pull dynamic on how it's going to progress and move forward.
So for next week, I'm going to dust off my old Colorado analysis and see if we can get that up to speed. And then, I'd love to hear more about your analysis. And we can continue to bounce ideas off each other.
Okay.
And I think Paul could be a good resource for you, Sean, because he is quite the retail analysis expert.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't say that. I'm learning as I go. But
I was gonna say I'm more than happy to share the data that I have with you guys for you to play with on your own time. I have no attachment to it or no need to keep it secret. So I can more than happy share that with you guys.
Could always be interesting. Like I said, the data points I'm interested in are basically the day of the week effects. So what days of the week have the biggest sales? And I'm kind of curious about morning versus afternoon. But I'm sure there's tons of good questions, but those are just the two that come to mind.
Yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to us. And then, check out Keegan's GitHub, my GitHub.
Yeah.
Cannabis industry data analysis there.
Yeah. So Sean, I joined this group probably 4 weeks ago or so, 5 weeks ago, maybe. And Charles and Keegan have been super helpful with my master's program, answering all kinds of questions about data and stuff. So, yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate the help you give me.
Sure.
It's always fun. I have a lot of fun every week. So we'll be in touch. And until then, have fun crunching numbers, and we'll be here next week.
And just real quick, I don't know if you guys saw, I put a link in the chat box, chat window rather, to GM's job posting board. So if you see anything you're interested in, just give me a shout out at my email account and we'll see what we can do.
Great. Yeah, I'm copying and pasting that right now.
All right.
But great to meet you all. This has been fun, engaging conversation. I don't usually get to nerd out on numbers like this, so this is kind of a nice, fun group here.
Definitely, and that's the whole point. Join a group of like-minded individuals because, it's fun. So we'll crunch some numbers next week, and like I said, I'll dust off my old Colorado analysis because I think you'll enjoy that, and I'll share it with you, and then maybe you can pick up from what I have.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Well, until then, have a productive week.
Take care, guys.
Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Take care. Bye.